Well, welcome everyone. So very pleased that you're with us and happy for you to get a chance to delve into the mind and heart with us, to Kym King, who's a wonderful member of our community. What I wanted you to know about Kym is that she is the Vice President of Development for the American Leadership Forum. And she's been for 30 years involved with Unity of Houston as a member and a New Thought student. So she is well credentialed to have this Unity conversation, as well as having put the practices and principles to use in her own life as a testimonial, a living testimonial, and a thoughtful, intelligent, wise woman who is doing what we're all doing, pondering the meaning of everything that we're going through. How are they related? How are they different? The things that are occurring. How am I related? How am I different in all of this? And where are we headed? You know, all of those really big questions. I don't know, we said it would be racism, global pandemic, and I guess we'll throw in world peace, you know, as well. Just so we cover the big bases, and anything else you guys bring up. So we're so happy that you're along for the ride on this conversation. What I thought we would do is just to sort of set the tone is with an opening prayer. So if you're ready, just invite you just to take a deep breath in. And to relax and open. And as our hearts are open to all of the experiences, all of the words coming across airwaves and pictures, and all of the things that we're reading, things that are coming into across our screen devices, device screens, I guess, all of the ways in which we are receiving input from the world and wondering what it means for us. Let us now remember that deep within us we harbor a touchstone, a deep river of peace, a deep river of wisdom, a deeper connection of unity, a place from which everything arises, and everything in us is already whole and complete. And our connection is eternal with one another, for we are connected in love, whether we know names and faces or not. And so as we touch base with this deep river of knowing of the unity that connects us all, that no matter how we express or the limitations of this lifetime or the consciousness that we're operating in across the board and across the world, we are truly one, and therefore hope lives in that. And so in that, we listen and ponder and vision the future together. And so it is. Amen.
Amen.
So Kym, I'm just going to let you open this baby up and let it roll, and just we'll go with you in it.
Well, thank you. The first thing I want to say is how blessed I feel to be in this conversation with you. You and I have known one another for a really long time.
Yeah.
You lead with such integrity and such compassion and such clarity that it has always been a gift for me. And I want you to know that I would be anywhere with you talking about anything. And it is especially gratifying to be in this particular conversation with you, because I know this is a topic that matters to both of us in a really, really deep way.
Thank you.
So let's begin. We talked about, one of the things I love is powerful questions. And we sort of talked about as we, what we wanted to talk about today. One of the first things we talked about is, how are we feeling? This is a moment where their emotions are high. People are feeling all sorts of things. And so wanted to start off a little bit with just kind of talking about how we're feeling, right? And for me, this has been a challenging week. You know, more than 200 people, 200,000 people have died of COVID-19 here in our country. Um, the wildfires are still burning in California. This has been a record storm season in the Gulf Coast. You know, we've had tornadoes and hurricanes and tropical storms. I read somewhere that we used up all the.
So while we're waiting, the conversation to prepare for today that Kym and I had was really just wanting to delve into how is it that we're feeling ourselves. So why don't you just kind of check in with yourself as you're listening to Kym's opening with how is it that you're really feeling? If you make a few notes of the varieties and maybe even contradicting feelings that you've had during some of this time, the last 6 months, 8 months, year, whatever time frame has been, constitutes some of this turmoil or some of this opportunity that's before us.
Thank you. I lost my internet. We were just talking about
Hello,
that.
Kym, welcome back.
And we had some unstable internet. So I am back. Thank you, Reverend Karen, for jumping in. So I guess the point that I was going to make is that this week, you know, we lost Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and we got the grand jury decision out of Kentucky, where the police officers that fired the shot that killed Breonna Taylor were not going to be indicted. And I'm having a hard time this week. Right? I'm having a really hard time this week. And I think one of the important points that I want to make about that is that it's okay not to feel okay. You know, I think sometimes from a spiritual perspective, we feel like it's important that we are always feeling up, that we're always positive, that we are always holding this positive emotion. But the truth, what I realized over my time studying spirituality is that what we so-called negative emotions, what we sometimes call negative emotions, are important pieces of data. You know, they tell us in many cases that something is not right, that something needs to change. And so it's important, I think, for us to pay attention when we feel as if we're in a quote unquote a negative emotion, if we're feeling sad or if we're feeling angry. You know, one of the things I'm feeling right now is tired. You know, as a Black person in America, it's like I feel like I've seen this movie before, right? And the more it keeps happening over and over and over again, there's this sense of being tired around it that is undeniable for me and a lot of people that I know that, you know, I've talked to about this. And I think the key, though, is to not get stuck in the emotions and to not act out of the emotions, right? To not act out of the anger or act out of the fear or act out of the sadness, to pay attention to it, to reflect on it, to figure out what it's trying to tell you, and then to think about how you want to be in relationship to it as a way to sort of figure out how to behave differently, how to move forward in a way that doesn't keep you stuck in those negative emotions. And the truth is, for me, I am generally a very positive, very hopeful person. I'm one of those glass half full people. And lately, I've been finding it really hard to stay hopeful in this moment. And here's why. Because I believe that the answer to what it is we're going through is within us, each and every one of us. And as I watch the news, I'm sometimes not very hopeful that we're going to figure it out, that we're going to make the changes that we have to make in order to not only survive these crises that we're going through, but to be able to thrive on the other end of it, you know? One of the things I've been thinking about a lot is how all of these things are connected. I mean, we know from a spiritual perspective that everything is connected. And we're dealing with three really big crises right now. We're dealing with a global pandemic, a health crisis. We're dealing with the economic crisis that's a fallout of that. And of course, we're continuing to deal with structural racism. And COVID-19 has only shined a spotlight on that in a way that we just haven't seen in a while. And I heard Ayanna Van Zant say recently on a talk show that she feels that these two things are really connected. She said that she believes that God sent the global pandemic for us to go home and sit down and think about who we were being, right? And to make some decisions about how we wanted to be moving forward as a people, as a community, as a country, as a world. And that really resonated with me. I also have been doing a lot of reading lately, and I've been pulling out some of the old classics. And one of my favorite books is Everyday Grace by Marianne Williamson. And what Marianne Williamson talks about in that book, and I'm going to paraphrase here, is how you watch the news. And in the book, she says, you know, we want to watch the news. We want to know what's going on. We want to stay informed. But when these sort of traumatic kinds of things happen, it creates an opportunity for us to decide who we want to be in relationship to these things. And so, so I guess from a standpoint of sort of how I'm feeling, while I'm finding it difficult to be hopeful, I'm not hopeless. And the reason that I'm not hopeless is because of all of you, right? Because of the work that our church is doing, is committed to, that those of you have given up part of your Saturday to be in this conversation. And people like us all over the country, all over the world, are trying to figure out what they can do to make a difference, to create some lasting, meaningful kind of change. And that keeps me from being hopeless in a moment that I find it hard to be hopeful. So Reverend Karen, this is a conversation. Jump in. What's on your mind after hearing all of that? You're on mute, my friend. Unmute yourself.
Sorry, I've been thinking. I was listening to you because I was following the track that you're leading, and pausing and considering in myself as well. What I would say is that you know, what I'm aware of is that there are any number of contradicting feelings. There's not a predictable one, or just like one. One of the biggest learnings of my life was that when someone asked me how I was feeling, it wasn't just one answer. I always kept thinking I had to pick one. You know, I had to pick the most acceptable one or whatever. And to learn that, you know, you can just have, you know, popcorn feelings, you know, just boom, boom, boom. You know, you can just feel almost whiplashed by different emotions depending on what's striking you and what's, you know, what's provoking. So I imagine, I think, I really do feel that this time is so confusing, and it's coming at us from all different sides. And it's I think, tailor-made to bust up our expectations and bust up our assumptions. It's throwing everything out on the street into a pile, and we have to pick through the things that are either of value or the things that we need to examine more closely. And I'm really happy to have this conversation today to kind of, you know, pick out some of the things that seem to be the most important to us as individuals. And as we move forward, how is it that we're going to be different? I don't see how we cannot be. I think because of what I just said, I believe we will not be able to resume the automatic the automatic controls that we had placed on our lives. I just don't think they will be relevant anymore. We're going to have to redesign, and we're probably in that process now.
Yeah. You know, Kevin Love, the famous basketball player, was quoted recently as saying, the worst thing that could happen out of this is for nothing to change.
Mm. So true.
Yeah, for nothing to change. So can we shift a little bit and kind of talk about what we're thinking and how we're processing this challenging time?
Good. Mm-hmm.
So for those of you who know me well, know that I am a lifelong student, that I've studied all sorts of things, design psychology and astrology and interior design. But two of the things that I've studied the most and have made the most impact in my life have been leadership and spirituality. And one of the most important skills that a leader can develop is the ability to be a great problem solver. And when you study leadership, one of the things that you learn about is that being able to clearly identify and understand a problem is the most important step in solving that problem. Because what can happen is you can think you know what the problem is, and then you get in gear and you go out there and you try to solve it, only to have the problem show back up again, right? And you realize that you didn't really solve the actual right problem, right? It's kind of like, for those of you who are gardeners, it's kind of like chopping off a weed at the the top, and you don't pull it out from the roots, it grows back. And that's sort of what happens when you don't actually solve the right problem. I think it was Einstein that said, if I had 55 minutes to solve a problem, or if I had 60 minutes to solve the problem, I would spend the first 55 trying to understand what the problem was. And in leadership theory, what you realize is that once you really have a handle on the problem, sometimes the solution is inherent in that problem. And I think that's a lot about what I've been thinking about with regard to this problem or issue of racism in America. It seems like it keeps coming up over and over again like a weed, and we never quite pull it out from the roots. And so it just keeps circling back in different ways, in different years, sort of looking a little bit different, but it's the same problem over and over again. And what I believe this moment is about, and what I think ultimately the solution to racism is about, spiritual and moral crisis. To me, I think this is a spiritual and moral crisis. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think that policy and systems change is not necessary or important. I think it's important to focus on policy changes and systems changes and doing some of the things that Black Lives Matter and other activist groups are suggesting that we do, and advocacy groups. But that said, I believe that lasting, transformative change will happen not as a result of systems change, but as a result of a change in people's hearts. Because systems are run by people. And until people change their hearts, I don't believe we will have the lasting kind of transformative change that many of us are seeking. Once people change their hearts, then the systems will automatically change, because people actually run the systems. The systems are run by us. And so this shift in how we are being, I think, is really critically important. So much of what is playing out, I believe, in the public square today is about our lack of willingness or a flat out refusal to just care deeply about each other. To just care deeply about each other. You know, talking about COVID, this idea of I'm refusing to wear my mask, right? A mask is uncomfortable, yes. but it is a relatively small thing to do to keep you safe and to keep others safe from a deadly disease, right? And so this idea that what's needed is a change of heart is actually something that I've been thinking about a lot. I think this moment is asking us to choose love over fear, um, and to ask ourselves the really hard question is, what are we willing to do to care about each other? You know, the rising tide lifts all boats.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's important. I think at the root of so many of the problems that we're having, climate change, you know, global pandemic, this fight over, do we open up the economy, or do we, you know, let people exposed to COVID-19? So much of it, I think we're looking at it in a way that's based in fear, and it's not about how we deeply care about each other.
Um, you're speaking my mission right there. It's Sandy Newkirk is aware of other conversations that we've had, and I'm gonna revert to some things that have been posted in the chat here, so we can kind of weave them in. Zelda said maybe this situation is staying longer because we've yet to get it. And I think you've got your finger on what it's going to take for real change, for real wholesale change to happen. And Sandy Fitz also said, and I'm assuming she's responding to the feeling, what she's feeling. She just put in parentheses, in quotations, "I can't breathe." Pandemic, fires, racism, floods, all of those things make make one feel like we're just being suppressed, that breath is kind of like the underlying thing that is causing us, to stop and consider that something life-threatening is happening here, that we can't go on like this, that something has to shift. And therein lies the hope, because really what wakes us up, what stops us from, status quo, same old, is a heart-opening change, something that's fundamentally stops us in our tracks. And I have been saying for some time, only because it happened to me, that all the information and knowledge I've had about, social injustice, institutional racism, inequities, inequalities. How many times do we have to see the statistics that divide people of color from people who are white in this country, and the stark differences in the length of time people live, the quality of their life, the amount of money that they make, the ways in which they live, the advantages or the opportunities, education-wise, in every conceivable measurement, there is discrepancy and disparity. And there is no, except racist ideas about that explains that, other than the fact that racism is institutionalized. If no one is doing it consciously anymore, it's because our MO and our operating system is fraught with it. It is predicated on that. And so all the law changes in the world just had counter laws that got changed later. They just got amended. They just got qualified. They just got selection. They got repurposed. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that it was always diluted and changed so that the net effect was null, or pretty close to that. So we didn't accomplish it with law changes. And I couldn't understand how we know it's wrong. It feels immoral. Why is it still here? Why do we still behave that way? Until I had a heart change, and it happened really with the Orlando shootings. It just caught me sideways and broke my heart that these kids were out, gay and LGBTQ, group of kids out in a nightclub who were gunned down for no other reason except they were gay, except they were there. And I just couldn't digest it in my heart. Broke open. And then a week later, the shootings in Dallas happened. And police officers protecting Black Lives Matter protesters gunned down by a Black man, selectively, only the police officers. It was just like all my assumptions were spilled out on the street, and I didn't know how to make sense of it. I couldn't just go on with my day and figure out who was right, who was wrong. How was this event isolated and different? And suddenly I saw it as a whole fabric of just too much blood. I had just simply had too much blood shed. And suddenly it was what you said. It was personal to me. And suddenly I thought, what if that were my friend or my family or my brother or my sister? What if that was, someone I knew? What if I worried that when I said goodbye to the people I love in the morning, that I needed to say a prayer that they would come home safe in the evening to have dinner? I don't know what that's like. And I could not imagine people who live like that every single day, because it could happen. And so that for me was the heart opening breaking. And I'll tell you, nothing will stop my own personal commitment to changing everything. Everything has to change so that we can rebuild things on a just and fair basis and keep an eye for that. So I'm sorry you mentioned it, because I just went into my little diatribe, but you just rang my bell. So thank you for doing that.
Well, and we'll talk about it a little more later when we get into the tips, but I think one of the keys, in addition to what you said, people have to come at this from a heart standpoint. People's hearts to be broken and broken open, because this really is a change that has to start within each of us before the systems that we are fighting against or trying to change will change, because systems are only a collection of people. Mm-hmm. They're just a collection of people. And so in addition to sort of this idea of having your heart broken, it's so important to make this personal. As long as this is something you see on the news or something that is affecting other people or something that doesn't have any personal connection to you, it's easy to just shut it off or to not think about it or to put it aside, especially as you so eloquently talked about, Reverend Karen, when the emotions are so strong and conflicted and changing, sometimes the feelings take you over. And if there is an easy way to not be in them, you will take it oftentimes. We will all do that. It's part of our human nature to sort of make ourselves get out of uncomfortable situations, right? But this idea of finding a way to make it personal is so important. I think for people who are in mixed race relationships right now, or for people who have mixed race children, people whose best friends are, Black, this is a personal moment, and it makes it a different kind of conversation, a different kind of willingness to step up and do your part. And so I think what you shared is really important. One of the questions I think we want to ask ourselves is, how do we make this personal?
Mm-hmm. Right. So it's really important. I mean, how can we just use our power of imagination, to put ourselves in that place, our hearts open to compassion, so that we can place ourselves in a situation that I play a mental game with myself. If everyone I saw in power were Black, and I kept coming in and I saw no one who was white in power, and when I walk into the grocery store, where two people are talking, Black people might be talking, and I come in and they stop talking and then turn a face to me and just say, can I help you? And I feel immediately like I've intruded, like I'm not welcome, that I'm somebody to deal with. And I give my need or my question and they hand it over to me. And then they turn and they change, their expression changes and they relax and they're talking with somebody again. I realize that happens every single day to people of color, seeing where in every echelon of experience, I understand, I feel more and more that I can understand how it feels to be living, you know, excluded when I'm, you know, no one says I'm excluded. No one stopped me from coming in. And yet I am not, I'm not really there. Do you know what I mean? I can sense what that starts to feel like. That becomes personal. And that isn't okay with me. That is not okay with me, that we live like that. I'm not saying we have to legislate anything. I'm saying hearts have to change. We have to see each other. We have to see each other. We have to care about each other and see each other, see myself in one another. And that's what we teach here in Unity. That's exactly what we seek to develop, the ability to feel one another without barriers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the other things that I've been thinking a lot about is sort of what is mine to do. Our friend Tracy Brown talks about this a lot, sort of what is mine to do. And while I'm still sort of, you know, processing through that, one of the things I know for sure is that Black people cannot solve racism. We did not create it, and it is not our work to eliminate it, right? Only white people can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to sort of hear your thoughts about that, Reverend Karen.
I 100% agree. I, for the longest time, with all that information, you know, as I was saying earlier, of noticing racial injustice and racial, you know, institutional racism and all of the ways in which things are the way they are, and seeing it over and over again, I couldn't deny it. I saw it and I didn't know what to do about it. I just didn't. And I literally stood on the sidelines and I thought, I don't see what I'm supposed to do. What can I do differently? Well, how can I make a difference? They're going to have to figure it out. I kept thinking people of color and you know, the system or the police, or they have to work this out. And I'll be an advocate for that. I'll be an ally, but I didn't know how to use my power until that opening happened. And then it became clear to me, the people with the power, the people with the unasked for privilege that I am one of, I will use my power. I will use my privilege. I will use my awareness in every place that I've been, every place I am, every condition or title or position or opportunity that is given to me. I will use that to speak from my heart emphatically, and I will not allow it, you know, the rebuff. I will not protect white fragility. I'm not protecting that any longer, because it's past time to wake up. We have got to. Our lives depend on it. Our future depends on it. And to me, it's very important that we white people say this to white people, so that there is the opportunity to have real honest communication. We speak the same language, and none of us made this happen consciously, but we are the beneficiaries of it. And therefore we have resource, we have advantages and privilege and power. And until we say game over with the way things have been, the game will continue, because we are unconsciously plugged in. and we have got to unplug in order to help break it down and recreate it. And it needs to be in connection and in partnership with people of color who can tell us where the system is really broken, because we can see it where we are.
One of the most powerful classes that I participated in recently was given by an organization called Acumen Academy. And the course was called The Path of Moral Leadership. And they introduced me to this idea. Well, the idea itself wasn't new, but how they languaged the idea was really powerful. And they talked about being able to accompany people. And I think what you're talking about here is that Black people can accompany you on the journey, right? We can help you understand things that you don't understand. We can help point out to you where your blind spots might be. We can help do those things. We can accompany you on the journey, but the work itself is not ours to do. And I think that's important as we sort of think about what is ours to do, to be really clear about what part is ours to do and what part is not ours to do. And I think accompanying on the journey is sort of a nice way to look at what our role could be and how that could, what our part could be in that, right?
Completely agree. And to, my mistaken notion that I was waiting for Black people to show the way or to say enough was enough, or I don't know what, I was waiting for the bell to be rung external to me, but my bell had to be rung. I had to open up. I had to change to be able to see how I can become, how I can be a partner, and how I can be a part of the change that I want to see. And it empowered me. And I want to also, I'm sure most of you are seeing the chats. There's some wonderful quotes in there and some wonderful comments that are coming up. And we're coming to the place here where we want to bring some questions and answers, mostly comments and discussion, into this presentation as well. So I just wanted to, there was one thing I wanted to bring into the conversation here. Michael got put in from Hazrat Inya Khan, Sufi master: God breaks the heart again and again and again until it stays open. Isn't that breathtaking? And that's exactly how I experienced it. It happened over and over until it wouldn't close again. Exactly. And therein lies salvation.
For us all.
Is it? Yes. And Tracy Brown writes from the Quran, verily Allah does not change the condition of people until they change what is within themselves. And Sandy Newkirk, positive messages energy spread as easily as negative ones. We and those who are like-minded initiate the momentum and maintain it. These are powerful ways of us recognizing that we have a wind of mysticism under our feet and wafting through our hearts and connecting us, that we have great wisdom to fall back on and great truth, just as Dr. Martin Luther King did, and how he pulled from all of the tradition that he knew and the depths of his heart and the truth to really instill in our own culture the tools that we really need to be able to do this. And really it's heart and it's love and it's believing that time has come. Looks like
so let's talk a little bit about what we're doing to stay centered and grounded. One of the other hallmarks of a great leader is understanding the power of questions. Mm. And I recently participated, or actually facilitated, a program for the American Leadership Forum here in Houston around this issue of racial injustice and racial inequality in America. And we started off by talking about our feelings. And then we ask the question, where are you finding hope? Right? Which is a powerful question. And in this moment where I sometimes find it hard to be hopeful, I've been paying a lot of attention to what I'm doing to stay centered and grounded in this moment. And so one of the things I'm doing is reframing. You know, it's a powerful practice. And one of our Unity members, Terry Emmerman, sent me a text message recently. And the text message said, what if this is happening for us instead of to us? And I thought, that's a perfect reframe, right? I mean, you know, you've seen it, I know I've seen it, all of these mimes and these t-shirts about what a horrible year 2020 is. What if instead we said that 2020 is giving us the most powerful opportunity to change that we've had in our lifetime? And what is that going to look like? And begin to ask ourselves some powerful questions about who do I want to be in relationship to this moment? What kind of country do I want to live in? Do I want to be a part of? Do I want to be a part of a country where people are not equal? Do I want to be a part of a country where Black Americans don't have the same opportunity, don't have the same educational opportunity, don't have the same economic opportunity, don't have the same kind of housing opportunity that other Americans have? Is that the kind of country that I want to live in? What country do we really want to live in? And then ask ourselves the question, what am I willing to do, right, to create that kind of vision, to have that vision become a reality, right? And so reframing is something, and asking powerful questions is a way that's helping me to sort of stay centered and grounded and hang on to hope in this moment. Another thing that I'm doing is taking care of myself, because this is a long game. 400 years of systemic racism is not going to change overnight. And so we can't just expect that we're going to do one thing today and not have to keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep moving forward, keep moving forward, keep moving forward. And so I've been, you know, trying to eat right, trying to exercise, trying to do all of those things that help you. But I'm also stepping up my spiritual practice. I'm praying more, I'm meditating more, I'm journaling more, I'm listening to God, I'm asking what is mine to do, and trying to be obedient and open, right, to hear what it is that God is trying to do through me in the moment. And then I'm trying to get some clarity about my intentions, right? Because one of the things that might be true is that the change that we seek, the kind of real transformative change that we seek, may not happen in my lifetime. I've already got my AARP card, right? And so part of what I know I'm fighting for is for your grandkids and your grandkids' grandkids to have to have this conversation 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, that at some point this conversation will not be necessary. And so while, as Martin Luther King said, and certainly not to compare myself to him at all, I may not see the change, right? But I can be a part of the change, knowing that what I'm really fighting for is a different future for the children that will come after us. And
Absolutely.
for us to have in mind.
It's never too late. I mean, this is the time and this is the place, and we're the ones, you know,
Yeah.
because
we are the ones we have been waiting for, right?
we're having the conversation. If we pulled our head up and we're looking around and we want something to be different, then it's up to us to start the ball rolling, to start moving things in that direction.
Yeah.
For those of you who are interested, I think you probably saw in the chat, Lorraine has posted a couple of really good books to give you some more insights and some ways to take a look at, you know, what we're really talking about when we mention white fragility, or, you know, kind of white education around racism. And because it's not always obvious to us, And we've been conditioned and trained really to look away from it and not to see it. And so this is a really great way for us to open our eyes and to see how we've participated and been complicit, even unintentionally. So it's very important to have that chance to do that. Kym, do you feel like this is a good time to open it up for discussion? I know we've covered a lot of ground, and you've introduced some great things and topics and things that have worked for you. So why don't we open it up for questions and comments and any things that you want to add to what you've heard or direction you'd like to take this conversation. We'd like to hear from you. So
Yes.
Donna will lead just that and give you a couple of instructions.
We already have a hand raised, a question from Robert Freck, and then after that, Lorraine Schroeder. So Robert, would you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, I'd just like to piggyback on some of the things Karen and Kym have said. I'm a 69-year-old white privileged male. And it was only with the George Floyd incident that I woke up. I mean, that really changed my perspective on everything to do with race relations. And since then I've studied it, I've read the books, and I've completely changed my perspective, but that was just me. And, I don't know that it was good what happened in Minneapolis, but it was necessary for me because I've lived 69 years and I've known 3 Black people in my life. I didn't know Black people. I didn't have any, anyway. So that's one. And 2 is, I really appreciated what Kym said about change doesn't necessarily happen here, because I've been feeling really hopeless about white privileged males like me who are in power in our country, who seem not to care about what the people think, what's in their hearts. You say what's in their hearts, but they don't care about that. So maybe this change doesn't come in our generation. Maybe it's just, and I do everything I can do for this election and for this, and I'm not sure it's enough. So maybe this change, like Kym says, it's been 400 years of racism. Maybe it won't be in our lifetime. And I just wanted to share one more thing I read the other day about hope. I think Kym mentioned glass half full, glass half empty. I read something that said, you know what, I'm just grateful I have a cup. I have a glass.
Yes. So, Robert, thank you so much for that. I do want to add something to your conversation about people in power. So, Dr. Stephen Kleinberg, who is a sociologist here at the University, at Rice University here in Houston, has been studying the demographics of our city for more than 30 years. Mm-hmm. One of the things he's now founded an institute, the Institute for Urban Research here at Rice. And one of the things he says is that what we are experiencing is a shift in the demographics of the country, that white men are no longer the majority in the country. And that is frightening to white men who have always been in charge and in power. And so, if we go back to our spiritual principles and we think about A Course in Miracles, for example, and we know that there are really only 2 emotions, everything else that we're feeling, it's either love or fear. And so what we're seeing acted out from a spiritual perspective is fear. Fear that we're not going to be in charge, fear that I'm not going to be in power, fear about what's going to happen to me if that happens. And while I'm not excusing it by any stretch of the imagination, I think to keep it in perspective, we realize that oftentimes the antidote or the real antidote to that kind of fear is love. And how we demonstrate that and what we do about that and how we choose to act on that, I think is an important thing for us to keep in our minds. And again, let's do everything that we can And while the kind of wholesale, lasting, transformative change may not happen in our lifetime, what we do right now, what all of us do right now, will determine what the future looks like for all of us.
And to add to your point, Kim, we ask every day, how could a woman actually, support all this stuff? And, it's the same concept you just described. A woman is so used to doing what a male privileged person tells them to do. And there are still so many women in that state, so that also has to change. Women also need to be more empowered.
Oh, it's changing.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that.
Just watch us.
Exactly.
But is it changing in Iowa and Nebraska and
Well, again,
perhaps men need to stop telling women what to do.
Amen. Amen. Yes.
Zelda had her hand up, and then Sandy.
Lorraine was next. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see her
she
hand.
put in the chat. So Lorraine, and then Zelda, and then Sandy. Yeah.
Perfect. Lorraine.
Hi, Lorraine.
Okay, thank you. Hi, thank you so much for being here. I wanted to say two things. One is that how I stay hopeful is continuing to educate myself. It's been going on for a few years now for me, but every time I read a new book or whatever, I've learned something about racism and about history and about my own behavior and biases. And so I'm hopeful that because there are things that I didn't know before, and now I know, and now I'm better. And, Robert said, maybe it's just me, and it's not just Robert, and it's not just me. There's a lot of people that are making an effort, so I am hopeful. The other thing is, like, sometimes things play out in our individual lives, and we're like, well, how was I supposed to respond to this? And so I just want to throw one out there, and just for feedback. I was waiting to get my legs waxed, and in the waiting area, I had my mask on and I was sitting on the floor, but I was thirsty, so I took my mask down and I took a drink of my water, and then I put my mask back up. And just as I was putting my mask back up, a Black woman was walking up the stairs, and all she saw was me putting my mask back up. And she was on the phone, and I heard her say to whoever she was talking to, oh, this lady just saw me and was so afraid she put her mask on. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to say something to her like, no, and so I don't know if it was just the COVID thing or if it was a Black-white thing. But so her assumption about what she saw, made a division between her and I. And I didn't want there to be a division, but I didn't know if I said anything, would it have made any difference? Would it have made her less tired than, like the language you used earlier, if she looked at that as a microaggression? Just throwing that out there.
Lorraine, thank you for sharing that story. And two things come up for me when I hear that story. One is how challenging assumptions can be. You make assumptions and you have no idea sometimes what people mean or what happened in the few moments before you arrived. And so I think it's important for all of us all the time, but particularly in this moment when things are so challenging, to try to do everything we can to not make assumptions about people, about situations, about events, and do exactly what you are trying to do, what you are doing. Educate yourself, sort of being reflective, thinking, participating in conversations like this. Change is the domain of us all, right? And it's important, I think, for us to realize that there are even small things that we can do to make a huge difference. And one of those things is to try not to make assumptions about, what's going on with other people or in other moments.
Okay, Zelda, would you please unmute and give us your question?
Yeah, and I just wanted to make comment to how much I appreciate that whole attitude of opening your heart. And that's where the answer is opening our heart, making it very personal, understanding, stepping into the other person's shoes. It just really hit me is that, these systems, we can legislate, but that's not what's going to change it. What's going to change is the change of heart, and trying to talk to somebody about their racism as opposed to talking to them about their heart. I think I will get more reception when I am talking to people about that heart. The people that I hang with might be ultra conservative, but they all have hearts. And that's, I think, where I can touch, And that's really thankful for that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Mhm.
Welcome, Zelda. Thank you so much for being here. What a gift it is for us that you are here all the way from California. Thank you so much. The thing I want to add to this is to further talk about this idea of changing your heart, and to pick up on something that Robert said about, before the murder of George Floyd, he just wasn't something that he thought a lot about. And as we talk about what things we can do to make this personal, right, to make this fight a personal one, one of the things that I think matters is being in relationship with people who are Black, right? That is important. When you know people who are Black, I mean, really know them, when they are your friends, when you have dinner with them, when you invite them to your birthday celebrations, then this conversation or this moment that we're feeling becomes more personal to you because it is related to someone who you care about. And that changes everything. It really does. It takes it away from a group of people to someone that you know, someone that matters to you, someone that you care about. I've had friends who have adopted Black children, and before they did that, this was a very different kind of conversation for them. All of a sudden, when it's your child, it's different, I personally, I'm not going to say a lot of it because he didn't sign up for this program, but I'm in a relationship with a man who is white. And he has been a champion of diversity and inclusion and equity for long before he knew me, right? But now being in relationship with me, this matters to him in a different way because this is about someone that he loves. And the more personal we can make this, the better it's going to be, because then it really makes a difference in terms of how you feel about it, how you approach it, what you're willing to do about it. And so, yeah, in fact, Unity is a great place for that. We have an amazing, diverse church, right? Amazing, diverse group of people in Unity churches. And I think people who are in Unity churches are open, right, to connecting with people on a deeper level in a way that I think is certainly more than superficial. And so reach out, get to know people, have a conversation with them, and allow them to accompany you on this journey.
Next we have Sandy, and then after Sandy we have Dale.
Welcome, Sandy.
Sandy, we can't hear you.
Sandy, talking. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Wow.
So I'm so glad to be a part of a group of people, not only the people here, but my church. I've been going to Unity for 20 years, and I have changed through that. There's a great philosopher that gave a speech at our church not so long ago. Actually, it was the beginning of the COVID. And he said that evolution was speeding up. Do y'all know who that philosopher was? Michael Gott. That really touched me because it wasn't a week later that COVID hit and everything was shut down. And that has really helped me, sometimes better sometimes than others, get through this. That I believe that evolution really is speeding up, and that's why we're being whiplashed with, and I'm going to use this word on purpose, apocalypse. What's the plural of apocalypse? Whatever.
Apocalyptic.
Well,
like
it wasn't, usually it's pretty much the end all be all. So there's
Okay.
really not a need for a second.
Okay, but we're going through many of them now, and there's a reason that I use that word. So evolution, I believe, is speeding up. One of the ways I get through this is to watch what goes in my mind, to mind my mind. So I try to remember that the reason that the news is on is to make money and to motivate me to be in fear. So click, to turn it off if I can. And the reason I use the word apocalypse is because I saw something on Facebook that might be of interest to you, that apocalypse comes from the Greek apocalypsis, which means uncovering. It's a derivative of the verb, whatever it is, apocalypse something, to take the cover off.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that is big, because all of this is taking the cover off the environment, the floods and the fires. It's taking the cover off of what's been hidden, what we haven't been doing in the environment. Racism, the cover has been taken off. Pandemic, the cover has been taken off of healthcare. So many things that the cover has been taken off, and we're all aflutter about this because in my opinion, because we've been asleep. So back to the great philosopher, evolution is speeding up. And Kym and everybody else who is, the people who are a little older like me, I'm expecting to see change before I leave this planet. And I'm doing everything that I can to participate in that and not get sucked into the news, the negativity, although I do. I'm Chicken Little, the sky's falling in, and then, okay, no, it's not. So I try to remember that evolution is speeding up and that we're up to the task. Thank you.
Oh, Sandy, that was brilliant.
Beautiful.
Just
right.
brilliant, Sandy.
And I just want to say, here. I'm right with you. The remainder of my life is dedicated to this goal, to this thing, however, I don't have an end point. I don't have an expectation. It's going to all get handled in my lifetime. But every breath I take from now until the last one is dedicated to making sure that I keep the ball rolling, as whatever's handed off to me, I want to use. And to that end, let me also second what you're saying about the news. We've got to keep a light hand with it, but don't turn your back on it either. From the standpoint of stay informed, know what's happening, find the sources for news that are the most even-handed, if you can find that, but don't unplug completely, because we need to be able to see what is changing, what is happening, what is coming, so that we can use it fearlessly to transmute the energy. That's what real change is about, is that we see what it is, we let go of any fears, and what we know is that we transmute that energy and redirect it in the arenas that we want it to shine, and the ways in which we want change to be demonstrated. So, so we don't need to fear it, and we don't need to get tired out by it either, you know, and listen to it or beaten down or hear the same thing over and over again. That's a cue to pull out. So that's my caution about turning off news. Just make sure you're in charge of it. So you be in charge. And so I know you are, and I know you're informed because I know you.
So we're gonna take two more
Michael,
questions and then move on. And one is from Dale, and then after Dale is Mary.
Donna, can I jump in real quick before
Yeah.
Dale, because I want to point out something that Reverend Michael just put in the chat box that I think is really important. It says that Michael Beckwith says to watch the news and take the story as a prayer request. Now that also goes back to a point I made earlier about Marianne Williamson and her book Everyday Grace. You know, look at the news, but ask yourself, who do I want to be in relationship to this? What can I, you know, what is this information telling me, and what, if anything, do I want to do about it? And I love this idea of taking every story as a prayer request, because we could use a lot of prayer for the stuff that's going on right now. So thank you very much for that, Reverend Michael, as always, right on point.
Perfect. Okay,
So who is our
Dale,
next question,
you have a
Dale?
question?
Well, it's more of I wanted to affirm what Kym was saying about the fear, the white male fear, and it played out with us. My husband and I it was suggested to us from a friend of mine who's of color that I watched the YouTube White Rage, and it's a talk that this phenomenal lady gave at Emory University about the history of all the changes in the voting rights for the oppressed, and how the voting rights got changed legislatively, but they found ways around it, and it's still happening today. And the whole premise of the White Rage was because the white men were the white people were fearful that the people of color were going to take over if they got in and got power and got voting. And I turned it into White Rage because it just infuriated me that it's still going on. And I got White Rage, but not quite the same way. And I think my biggest struggle right now with what we're all going through is, you know, listening to the news and seeing people who are saying and doing things that I think is the antithesis of the direction we should be going, and then coming back and still centering in, saying they too are children of God, and I need to love them. But at the same time, I have a hard time doing that. And I want to be more unity, as I would call it, in being able to see them in the light of God. And I'm really struggling with that because I just want to use an ugly, ugly word that I don't like using, which is hate. And I don't like hating it. And it really is something very hard for me to stay focused and to stay in the positivity and the hopefulness when I see so much ugliness out there, and knowing that we all are one, but I can't see, at times I just don't see it. And then I have to turn the news off and just say, I'm not going to let it affect my mood. But it still is something that I think it deeply struggles me.
Dale, thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to say a couple of things. One is that back to something that Sandy said a little earlier, that the news no longer exists to inform Americans. That used to be what the news was about years ago. I'm originally, my original career was in the television business. Regulation, that all changed. And what happened was it became a big monopoly game. It was all about buying and selling properties, buying and selling stations, buying and selling goods. And so because of that, most of the stories that you see on the news are going to be stories that inflame people. They're going to be stories that are provocative. And so one of the things that I try and do is realize that there's a lot more good happening in the world than I get to see on the news, because the news is not going to show that, right? And so if you think about what we're doing today, and think about that there are people all over this country that are today, right now, doing something to help their neighbors, or to make a difference in, you know, they're going and helping people register to vote, or they're, you know, they're giving money to the ACLU. They're doing what they can do from the space that they're at. And I think about that, and I think about the fact that more of that is happening than what I'm getting a chance to see. And it helps me maybe a bit more balance, right, around what might be actually happening out there in the world. The other piece that you talked about how challenging it is sometimes to not feel negative, or to not hate people that are doing things that feel so egregious to us. And for me, that goes, you know, what Reverend Michael put in the chat box. I do my best to try and pray for them. I realize that it's based in fear, which you already know, you so eloquently said, and to pray that somehow their heart is touched, that their fear is reduced or subsided, and that they will then wake up, right, and have their heart open and broken, so that they can be a part of the solution and not continue to be a part of the problem. And that's kind of, you know, part of the practice I use around that, because it's really hard. I completely agree with you. It is really hard sometimes.
Well, it feels like we're moving into the time to just give you a few takeaways that Kym and I have prepared. We wanted to share with you before you left. So you've got some things to take, and there's some wonderful things in the chat. I hope you've taken pictures of it. You're certainly welcome to scroll through and take some screenshots and keep those pieces for yourself, because there's some great input in there. One of the things that, and Christy, what I was going to mention to you is that your point about when I, how do I use my principles when I see somebody spewing venom or enraging me in some way, shape, or form, whatever that is in my higher mind, in my better moments. Once I kind of get over, I spew out whatever I need to release, and then when I really remember, how do I want to live now? How do I want to move out? Where do I find my peace? Is to really realize that all I have done is I have taken their words, and I have at some point projected my own energy on that person, that I need to take responsibility for. If that person has the capacity to enrage me, then what is it that I'm holding on to that is really the piece that I need to own and be honest about? And what are my judgments, and what is my attack, positions, and release those, and to see that person, or to see those words or those ideas as just coming out of the fear that I also have about certain other things or certain other behaviors. And so in doing that, I find my compassion, that somebody is operating out of anger or rage or fear themselves. All of that comes from the same place. And that the child of God that I know them to be is far removed from that experience right then. And in that moment, I pray for both of us that I can let go of my rage, because it gets in the way of my real power and my real ability to exact the change that I really want. And so it's simply a reminder, and that person becomes a teacher to me. And I use it that way. And I'm not excusing or denying or defending anything that person is saying. Still don't agree with it, and I don't want to hear it anymore. But at the same time, I'm aware of the practice that is called out in me because of my own reaction. And